Hey everybody, welcome to JPD Weekly. So I have my set torn down because we recently had Timothy Alberino over here to record an interview for an upcoming documentary that we have coming out through Skywatch Films. If all goes to plan, you can never really tell exactly how things are going to be scheduled out, but if all things go to plan, this will be my second documentary film, and it's kind of about what's going on with the whole UFO disclosure movement. What are aliens biblically? That kind of stuff. So we had Timothy Alberino out to record an interview, which we did that yesterday. Had like a 3-hour long interview. It was a lot of fun. And so that's why my set is torn down and this one is put up. So you will have to bear with me for today, but it'll be worth it. So today I wanted to talk about a little known possibility. Now, those of you who follow me, you know that I'm a pre-trib rapture guy, pre-millennial, dispensationalist, fundamentalist, all that stuff, all the stuff that you're not supposed to be in Christianity today. I'm that. But I think that I'm actually I'm looking at a possibility that is more pre-trib than even pre-tribbers today. And I wanted to talk about that because one thing that we know is that the rapture does not start the last 7 years. It doesn't start the tribulation. The rapture is not the sign that, biblically, is not the sign that says, okay, there's 7 years left until the return of Jesus. But a lot of people think that, though. And I believe that when this happens, when the rapture happens, the people that are left are going to be thinking that. Well, the little bit that they know, they're going to say, well, I remember grandma talking about a 7-year tribulation, and this has got to be it. And most people who subscribe to the pre-trib rapture, 7-year tribulation, all that, most people figure that the tribulation starts pretty soon after the rapture, like maybe a couple of months, a few months, a year at most. But the more I'm looking at it, I think there actually could be possibly decades. And a lot of people, I haven't heard too many people talk about this. Some people, I have heard say, well, I don't think it could be decades because what would be the point? Why have that long? And I think part of it is because, well, for one thing, we get extra time with Jesus. So, that's good. But part of it is at some point, we believers get our rewards, like that's mentioned in Corinthians. Our works are, burnt up if they're for ourselves, or there's, the wood, hay, stubble thing, precious stones if they're for Jesus. So we get our rewards. And we see in Revelation, right when John is caught up, like right when John is caught up in Revelation 4, and after he describes some of the stuff he's seeing, he describes what are called 24 elders. When you look at the description of the 24 elders, what they're wearing, crowns, white raiment, the song that they sing, all of this stuff, I believe that represents the rapture church. Because when you compare the descriptions of the 24 elders with the descriptions of the rewards that are talked about in Revelation 2 and 3, they line up perfectly. All right, so John first gets caught up. What is the thing that starts the rapture? Or the tribulation, excuse me. What is the thing that starts the tribulation? It's the breaking of the first seal. It's the Antichrist, the signing of the covenant, the confirming of the covenant with many, talked about in Daniel. That actually starts the 7-year tribulation. So how much time is there between the rapture and the confirmation of the covenant? Well, and when do we get our rewards? Because a lot of people teach that we get our rewards during the 7-year tribulation while that's going on earth, we're in heaven getting our rewards. But we don't actually see that in Revelation. We see Jesus breaking seals. So Jesus isn't spending time individually one-on-one with us believers during the tribulation. It seems like that's already done. And that's why I brought up the elders, because the elders already have their rewards before the tribulation even starts, right? So how much time is there between the rapture and the beginning of the tribulation? If the elders already got their rewards, if and what's also interesting is one of the elders tells John, stop weeping, um, uh, for one has come and conquered. So the conquering is already done. It's finished. Well, when is Jesus conquer? Well, for one thing, what is he conquering? He's conquering death for sure. Now that for Jesus himself was done at the resurrection. But remember, others were resurrected with him, and that was the first fruits of the dead. So when is that finished? When is that conquering of death actually finished? And I would say it's at the rapture resurrection event for believers, for those who put their faith in Jesus. At that point, and after we get our rewards, we are reinstated, we're reconciled to God in heaven, we can be with him and with Jesus. At that point, I think that's when someone could say Jesus has conquered. It's done. The church age is finally over. The church age is over. Because again, when does the church age end? The church age ends not at the rapture, but at the beginning of the tribulation. I believe the very last part of the church age is us receiving our rewards. That would have to be in the church age. That's not going to be in the Israel age. Because at the beginning of the tribulation, that 7 years, at that moment, at the moment that the church age ends, right at the signing of the covenant, or the confirming of the covenant, right at the breaking of the first seal, that's when the last week of Daniel starts. The final week of Israel. There's two different plans here. There's a plan for the church and a plan for Israel. And so that's when God's focus has shifted back onto Israel, right? So the church age doesn't end with the rapture. The church age, I believe, ends when the last believer has received his reward and we're reconciled to God. That's why the elders already have their rewards when John is caught up and he sees them, and when Jesus comes to take the scroll. Jesus comes to take the scroll. He's not giving believers rewards then, because now his focus is back on Israel. Now he's starting the process of his return, which takes 7 years. Now he's starting the whole day of the Lord stuff. So church age is over. Israel has one final week, one final week of Daniel, one last 7 years to deal with. And so that would have to mean that Jesus has already given believers their rewards. Is a couple of months enough time to do that? If we're raptured and then a couple months later, the tribulation starts, is that enough time to do that? Is that enough time to give every believer their rewards? Maybe. I mean, it's possible that we all get our rewards at the same time. I don't think so, because when you read the couple of texts about that, it doesn't seem to be that. It seems like we each get an individual time with the Lord, one-on-one time with the Lord. He goes through our lives. So how long would that take? Would a year be enough time to get through all Christians for the past 2,000 years? I don't know. I don't think so. Part of it too is, we know when the rapture happens, we're caught up to meet them in the air. So it's not that we're caught up to heaven. It's people in heaven. They get raptured too. They actually kind of like come down to whatever the air is. I don't know exactly what the air is, but I don't think it's like the Earth's atmosphere. We're not going to be hovering up there in the clouds. But I think that's an idiom or a euphemism for something else, and it might actually be the bridal chamber, the consummation. If you use the analogy of the ancient Jewish wedding, and Jesus used this, if a really good movie on this is Before the Wrath, but there's really good books too. Actually, Maranatha, Our Lord Come by Renald Showers is a great book that has documented this years ago, and that can really help explain it. But basically, there comes a point where we're in this kind of marriage ceremony with Jesus, and right now we're in the betrothal kind of period where the groom goes to make an addition to his father's house for his bride, and that was an actual custom that they did in Israel in Jewish weddings. And at some point, the groom comes back for his bride at a time that she doesn't know, and then takes her home. So that's what we're waiting for. That's what the rapture is. It's a picture of the rapture. So we're waiting for that. But then the marriage is consummated. And that, I believe, is when we get our rewards and we have our one-on-one time with Jesus and go through our whole lives. Now, I don't think that happens in heaven. Not exactly. I think that it's either a section of heaven, or it's a private area that angels aren't allowed, that nobody except Jesus and us are allowed. And why do I say that? Because in Revelation, when why is John weeping? He's weeping because nobody can find Jesus. It says that they search the earth, and in the earth, above the earth, and below the earth. Basically, they're looking everywhere. But there's one place where they can't look because they're not allowed to enter, and that's that bridal chamber. Because in the ancient Jewish wedding, the only people that were allowed in the bridal chamber were the bride and the groom, obviously. So it's whatever the air is that we're caught up to meet the Lord in the air and will forever be with him. And those who are dead in Christ, they get raised first, but they go to the air too, and we go. Those are all church age believers for the past 2,000 years. Wherever that is, I mean, it's some part of heaven, or it's some just set aside place. I don't know exactly, but it's not heaven like in the way that we think of it. But wherever that is, that's where we meet to receive our rewards. And I don't think just a couple of months would be enough time. Now some might say, well, time operates different in heaven. Don't you know that? I actually don't know that. I don't think that it does. Because there is a principle, and you see it all over in Revelation, but there is a principle that time operates the same in heaven that it does earth, at least the parts of it that have anything to do with us. Now, there might be multiple dimensions of time, but if there are, they're irrelevant. I actually believe that there are, but they're irrelevant to this kind of thing, because when you read through Revelation, there are many scenes where the angels are doing temple duties, heavenly temple duties. Well, there is an ancient belief or an ancient custom, and you can find this in the Bible, but there was an ancient belief that the reason it was so important for the priests to do their earthly temple duties on exact days and in exact ways, the reason that was so important is because there was this belief that angels were doing that in the heavenly temple as well on the same days, and somehow those rituals converged into some type of thing that paralleled each other. So they had to be done on the right days. Well, when you read through Revelation, there's a bunch of places where angels are doing heavenly temple duties, right? So time must operate the same for it to correlate with earth time and for that to even be possible. So also there's several things, Revelation talks about silence for half an hour in heaven, but John is using half an hour, so that's earth time, but he's using that to describe something in heaven. And I don't think that's just an allegory. I don't think that's just, well, that was just the only way he could understand it. I don't think it's that. I think it was a half an hour. Even in the eternal state, after everything is restored, we read that, the tree of life produces fruit every month. So somehow there's no need of the sun anymore. We have Jesus and the Father and the Holy Spirit, and that's lighting everything. And somehow there's still months. So there's still time. The way that I look at it, because people get hung up on the multiple dimensions of time thing, the way I look at it is like, if I wanted to paint this wall here, I don't need to know the volume of the whole room. All I need to know are the dimensions of that one wall, if that's all I'm going to paint, if that's what I'm focused on. Now, that does not mean that there's more dimensions to the room. There are a lot more, but it's just not relevant. It's not relevant to the purpose that I have in mind. So there probably are multiple dimensions of time, but they're not relevant when it comes to prophecy or anything that's happening between heaven and earth. They're just, and us, they're just not relevant. So I believe that because of that, time does, at least in the things that have to do with us, time does operate the same. So if it operates the same, and if we do get one-on-one time with Jesus, I don't think that a year or a couple of years or a few months would be enough time to do that. And I don't think that heaven is just so just so spiritual and allegorical and so unknowable that could happen somehow, and it doesn't have to make sense. I don't see that described in the Bible. Allegorists do that kind of stuff, but I don't see it. So I think the way to solve this, and also part of it too, and if you guys are into Bible prophecy like I am, you might have wondered this. The rapture can happen at any time, but there are a lot of other unfulfilled prophecies. And I'm not only talking about the tribulation stuff. There's a lot more other things. There's a lot of stuff having to do with Israel. There's a lot of wars. There's Gog, Magog. There's a lot of things that if you take all of them and try to cram them into a 7-year period of time, it starts to become unrealistic. It's like, how could that all be possible in that amount of time? Because you start getting things that conflict. At the Gog Magog war, for example, you start getting things where people will put that at the end of the millennium, because for one thing, it does say Gog and Magog at the end of Revelation, and when it describes the final battle at the end of the millennial reign. But they'll put it there. But if you have Gog and Magog there, then you have radioactive things like burning for 7 years or something like that in the eternal state. So that's a problem. Now, we might have that in the millennial reign. You could have that because there's a description of Babylon or something like burning for forever, for a long time, and that would be happening through the millennium. So you could have stuff like that. But when you take all of these unfulfilled prophecies and you try to just cram them into that 7-year period, it just starts to get really hard to imagine. It doesn't mean it's impossible. Maybe it all does happen in that 7 years. It very well could. But it gets hard to really try to tie everything together. But what if there's a rapture and there's 40 or 50 years before the start of the tribulation? What if we have that instead? Clarence Larkin actually proposed this idea. He was one of the most influential dispensationalist writers of the 20th century. And he said that it's possible that decades could pass between the rapture and the beginning of the tribulation. Here's a direct quote from him. He wrote, quote, "So if we could fix the exact date when this century will close and count back 7 years, the rapture might occur 5, 10, or even 25 years before that, so as to give time for the rebuilding of Babylon and other events that are to occur before the tribulation can begin. Otherwise, the rapture would not be a surprise." I want to make mention real quick. Surprise doesn't mean secret. Anytime you hear secret rapture, then you have somebody who is mocking the pre-trib rapture, and in my opinion, doesn't take it seriously. Just doesn't take the topic of the rapture seriously at all. I think, in my personal opinion, I don't see how post-trib could work biblically, but I'm not going to mock it, and I'm not going to disparage people who believe in it. There was a long period of time where I believed in it too. There was a couple of years where I was a post-trib guy. But the idea of the pre-trib rapture is so hated that you can tell who actually takes this topic seriously by how they treat the views that they disagree with. I totally disagree with post-trib, but I'm not going to mock people who believe in it. I think that's just immature and silly. And unfortunately, I see a lot of really smart people do this. A lot of brilliant people who are just totally amazing in every other way, but say they're post-trib or something, and then for some reason, this inspires this spiteful, kind of prideful, haughty attitude, where they start throwing out terms like, "Oh, you just believe in a secret rapture. I just don't see a secret rapture." Like, what's secret about it? I've never understood that, but they love that term. I've never understood that. But what we do believe in is that the rapture is imminent. We don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know when. Nothing has to happen before the rapture. So there's no prophecy that must happen before the rapture could happen. That's what it means by imminent. And, we believe in imminence because all over in the Bible, it makes it clear that the Lord could return at any time. Well, how could he return at any time if it's a post-trib view? He can't return today in a post-trib view because you have 7 years of the tribulation to go through first. So for those reasons and a lot more, That's why I'm pre-trib. But the more that I'm thinking about this, like pre-trib thing, where it's possibly even decades earlier, the more it's seeming like it's possible. And think about this. Imagine the deception. Let's say a rapture happens. The world's freaking out. You know, a lot of people probably would get saved right then and there, just because they have family members who have talked about it and they didn't really believe it. You know, they didn't believe their family members, but now their family members have disappeared. So probably quite a few people are going to get saved. But imagine what they're going to think. This is it. This is the beginning of the tribulation. We have 7 years of hell on earth now. Well, what if 7 years go by and there's no return of Jesus? There's no Antichrist. There's no incidents at all. I mean, it's kind of just cleanup after the great disappearance, or whatever they'll call it. They probably won't call it the rapture, but whatever they end up calling it. 7 years go by, nothing. 8 years goes by. Well, now they're definitely in the clear. You know, they breathe a sigh of relief. 10 years, 20 years go by, 30. And all of a sudden, a new generation is brought up who were born post-rapture, post-great disappearance. They're brought up in this world, so they have no real concept of how horrifying of a time that was when everybody just disappeared one day. To them, it's just a story that they hear about and from their parents. And then they start hearing about these silly people who thought it was a rapture, but clearly it wasn't, because it's 30 years later and there's no Antichrist, no second return of Jesus, no, none of that. Imagine them saying peace and safety at that point. Imagine them relying on themselves at that point, because they had to rebuild the world. They're relying on themselves. Jesus never came back. They're just, they take care of themselves. And you have a whole new generation of people that are born into a super type of materialism, a super type of it's all about us kind of thing. And imagine how unrepentant those people would be when the signs actually start, when the covenant is confirmed, you know, when the tribulation actually does start. They will have had their whole lives denying that this has anything to do with the tribulation. It would seem silly and foolish to them to think that this was the tribulation, because the world had already gone through that. That's superstitious. That is not the tribulation. Imagine the deception. And the more that I'm thinking of that and reading how unrepentant the people of the world are in the book of Revelation, it begins to make more sense if there's a long period of time between the rapture and the beginning of the tribulation. It puts so many things into perspective. One thing, too, that I want to mention, and I'm wondering if I want to do this in members only or if I want to do it now. Now let's do it in members only. I do want to talk about the 7 letters to the 7 churches, and this idea that these churches are different church ages. And some people think that. A lot of people say that we're the church of Laodicea. I actually don't think so. I think we're Philadelphia, and I'm going to tell you why. Not we as the American church, you know. I think Laodicea is beginning with us, but just really quick, think of Christianity in the world that are being martyred and they hold on to their faith. I don't see Laodicea in that. Christians in the Middle East or Christians in China who have underground churches and they risk their lives to learn about and serve Jesus. That doesn't seem like Laodicea to us. If we get rid of our American, you know, perspective and look at more worldwide, or especially in the Middle East, I think we're Philadelphia. And if we are, we are the church, like mini age, that's going to see the rapture, and it talks all about it. It puts it into perspective. I want to talk about that. I'm going to get all into it in members only, so we'll do that. Head on over to dailyrenegade.com and get a membership right now. You can get a free trial, but get a membership. And you can see the rest of this video. Also, while you're at Daily Renegade, if you're not a member yet, go to the homepage and you'll see some free stuff. There's free episodes of Sharpening Report, and there's free stuff right on the homepage that you don't even have to sign in to get. And check those out, especially the one about a Cornerstone Asset Metals, because we need to be able to protect our assets, and the economy is absolutely tanking. I mean, we all see that. Gas prices are going up. Lumber prices, piece of wood is like gold now, but it's getting more and more expensive, and it's going to hit more areas of the market. More markets are going to be affected by this. The whole economy is affected by this. So what we want to do is be able to protect our assets. You can do that through Cornerstone Assets. It's basically you roll over your IRA or 401k into silver. And what's great about silver is it holds its value. So this is not a get rich quick kind of thing. What it is you invest in silver. They take care of you. They explain it. They hold on to it. That episode of Sharpening Report that's right on the homepage will explain everything to you. It's really easy. I don't know anything about this stuff, and it was really easy for me to do. I have some of this, but what makes this company amazing is they're Christians. They are Christians first. They do this as a ministry effort. And we as Christians are always saying, like, we want to build our own stuff. We want to have our own thing. We don't want to have to rely on the world. You know, we don't want to have to rely on the banking system or like the satanic beast banking system. We don't want to have to rely on all this stuff. We want our own thing. Well, Cornerstone has done that, at least in this area. So we have our own thing. We have our own type of like banking system, you know, and all it is, it's super simple. You just invest, you don't lose money, you don't gain money. You take the money that you have and you put it in silver, and silver holds its value over long periods of time, no matter what's going on with the economy. So the value of your assets, your money, stays steady while the economy goes down and down and down and down. So in a tanking economy, your assets will be worth more technically in a tanking economy, but really what's happening is the economy is going down and your assets are being maintained as they are. So that's what we want to do. It's really important. I believe every Christian should be doing this, even if you don't have much assets, but you want to save some for you or for your kids or your family or whatever. Cornerstone is the only company that I trust to do this. I know them personally. They're personal friends of mine. Actually, Mike Stibbs, who works with us here at Daily Renegade, he works at Cornerstone too. And, Mike's a great guy. I've been good friends with him for a long time now. And he's even handled some of my own financial stuff. He is really bright, really smart, extremely trustworthy. And it's a wonderful company. The guy that runs it, Terry Sock, I'm good friends with him too. So I definitely trust them. But pray and ask God, before making any big decisions, and go and you can request more information from Cornerstone. They'll talk with you one-on-one and let you know exactly how it works, what's involved. You don't have to know. You don't have to know anything. If I'm not an economist. I don't know much about this kind of stuff, but I have silver, and it's just been easy, and so it's a good thing for us to do as Christians, and especially with the way the economy is going, this can help protect our assets, so you can leave things over for again, your kids or whatever. So look into that. There's also another episode that I believe is up there now. If not, it's premiering soon, but it is at dailyrenegade.com. Another episode I did with Dr. Ken Johnson about the Dead Sea Scroll calendar, and we actually have print versions of that now. I can show you. We have a print version of the ancient Dead Sea Scroll. I want to make sure you can see that calendar. And this is really cool because, like, when you open it up, it starts in March because that's where the Essene calendar, the Dead Sea Scroll calendar starts. But on the bottom part, you get the normal Gregorian, our normal calendar, St. Patrick's Day, all that stuff. But then on the top is where you get the actual Dead Sea calendar. So you get both. It's two calendars in one, but you actually get to see on all of our days what feast days those fall into. And so it's a really, really handy tool. You can hang it up on your wall. It's a beautiful calendar. If you like this one, this is the square version. But you can click on the link in the description below or just go to dailyrenegade.com. You can see a picture of it there. But this helps support not only this ministry, but also Dr. Ken Johnson's ministry, BibleFacts.org. So it helps support both of us. He and I split the profits. So, but I think that's really cool. You can check out that episode and find out what that's all about. So there's lots of free stuff. But if you want the rest of this episode, go to dailyrenegade.com. If you don't know if you want to financially support us, you can get a trial version, and that's totally fine, and you can watch the rest of this video. And yeah, I guess that's it. So we will see you over there. Everybody, if you are already a member, hang on the line. We got a lot more to talk about. Everybody else, thank you so much. Until next time, take care and God bless.